So, Mr. President, thank you for having the time for this interview, and congratulations for clinching the Republican nomination.
Thank you.
Israelis remember the historic decision you took as a president for the Jewish state. Now we are under a war. And our first question is whether you support Israel's goal to completely destroy Hamas.
Okay, so let me just explain why it's so sad. If I were president, you would have never been attacked because Iran was broke. They had no money. China couldn't buy oil from them because otherwise China wouldn't be able to deal with the United States. I said to China, I said to many nations, 47 nations, I spoke to many of them personally, if you buy oil from Iran, you will not do any business in the United States, and we're going to tariff your products. Every single one of them agreed. I didn't lose one, not one. And Iran did almost no oil business. You know that. Nobody would buy oil because of me. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for anybody. And now they're sitting with $221 billion in cash, and they control Iraq, which has $300 billion in cash. It's like a subsidiary. Whether you like it or not, it's like a subsidiary because stupidly the United States went in and blew everything up. You know, you had two countries that were sort of equal in power, and one of them got blown up by the United States, and now Iran has a big advantage in the Middle East over a lot of other countries. When I saw October 7th, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen because there was no reason for it. They would have never, ever done that for two reasons. Number one, they were broke, and number two, I was the president. They would have never done that because they knew there would have been very big consequences. All right. That being said, you have to finish up your war. You have to finish it up. You got to get it done. And I'm sure you'll do that. And we got to get to peace. You can't have this going on. And I will say Israel has to be very careful because you're losing a lot of the world. You're losing a lot of support. But you have to finish up. You have to get the job done. And you have to get on to peace. You have to get on to a normal life for Israel and for everybody else.
So if you re-elect in a few months once again to be the president, and Israel still may be in a war, how would you help Israel?
Well, look, there has been no president better to Israel than me. Iran wanted to make a deal, and what the deal, 90% of the deal that I want to make is no nuclear weapon. That's 90%, almost 100%. It might be 100%. That's all I want, no nuclear weapon for Iran. And it's so sad when I see what's happening in Israel and Ukraine and other places, many other places. Inflation, you take a look at inflation, we wouldn't have had inflation that was caused by his stupid energy policies. And it's too bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country. I'm a very loyal person. I've been loyal to Israel. Look, I've been the best president in history by a factor of 10 to Israel because of all the things I do. The embassy, Jerusalem being the capital, the best location for the embassy, and getting the embassy built. But then you have Abraham Accords, and then you have Golan Heights. Nobody even thought that was going to be possible. I did that, and I did it because of a lot of reasons. Israel has to do what they have to do, but we have to get to peace because the world is turning, and it's not a good thing for Israel. What's happening is not a good thing.
I want to share with you a question that in our minds, every leader in the world should reply. How would you react if, God forbid, it was your children or grandchildren who were kidnapped by Hamas or suffering the horrors that so many Israelis were going through on October 7?
On October 7? I would say I would act very much the same way as you did. You have to be crazy not to. Only a fool would not do that. That was a horrible attack. But it was an attack that I blame on Biden because they have no respect for him. He can't put two sentences together. He can't talk. He's a very dumb person. He's a dumb person.
We see, changing now to economy issues, we see rise of inflation actually all over the world, especially in the last 2 years since the war in Ukraine and then now the war in Israel, including this Suez Canal, which is actually close to international trade. How do you see the world coming out of this crisis? I mean, do not we need strong America to stop all this mess around the world?
The problem with the world today is Trump isn't president of the United States. If Trump were president of the United States, there'd be no problem with China and Taiwan. There'd be no problem with Israel being attacked on October 7th, and Ukraine would have never happened. The attack on Ukraine would have never happened. That would have never happened with Putin. For two reasons. Number one, he wouldn't have done it if I were president. We used to talk about it. He would never have done it. And very importantly, oil prices were much lower.
By the way, you have any plans to visit Israel in the coming future?
No, I've loved it. I've been treated very good there. They say if I ran for office in Israel, I'd get 98% of the vote. I'm not Jewish, and yet Israel to me is very important. That's why I did Golan Heights. Golan Heights is worth trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars. I called in our ambassador, David Friedman. I said, give me a little bit of a lesson, a history lesson on Golan Heights, 5 minutes or less, if possible. And he did. He gave me a very good, quick history lesson, and I made a decision. I gave you something that nobody else would have given you. But the biggest thing I gave the capital of Israel and the whole thing with the embassy, which created the capital in a sense.
Mentioning Ambassador Friedman, he just presented a new plan, I don't know if you saw it, suggesting that the United States will recognize Israel's sovereignty over the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, the way it's called. Would you support such a plan?
Well, they want to show it to me. They want to discuss it. I'm going to take a look at it. Look, I've been doing a lot of things for Israel. That's what's good for Israel. But I also want peace. I want to see peace like everyone else. You want to see peace too. But they do want to show that to me, so they'll be doing that.
Would you like to send any message to the people of Israel who are now in one of the most difficult times the country has experienced?
I would send a message. I would send a message, and I'll start off by saying I was the best president in the history of Israel, but there was never been a president, and mostly anybody, whether it's a president or not, nobody did for Israel what I did for Israel, including defense, including billions and billions of dollars a year, $4 billion a year for years when other people wanted to cut it off. But I will say that Israel's in trouble right now. It's a very troubled place. An attack happened that should have never been allowed to happen, both from the Israeli standpoint and from the United States standpoint. If they respected our president, which they don't, they have no respect for him whatsoever, that attack would not have happened. That's why it wouldn't have happened with me. But I say just be strong, be smart, and let's get this over with. And when it's over with, you're going to be back to having a great life. Look, I know Israel very well. I spent a lot of time there, and I have a lot of friends there, tremendous number of friends there. They're incredible people. It's an incredible place. You want the fighting to stop. Everybody does. You have to finish up, but you want this. You got to get back to having that country again the way it was. So sad that this could have happened. The date of October 7th is going to go down. It's just a terrible. What a terrible thing to happen. And it bothers me so much when I see people. They don't talk about October 7th anymore. They talk about how aggressive Israel is, and it's amazing that they're not talking about October 7th. And
why don't they talk about it?
They don't want to talk about it. When I talk about it, people don't want to hear about it. You know, you have a lot of people on the outside that are not friendly to Israel, and they're never going to be friendly to Israel. And you have to be very careful. You're in a very treacherous, we call it a neighborhood that's a little on the dangerous side, right? You're in a very dangerous neighborhood. And with Iran getting a nuclear weapon, once they have a nuclear weapon, you'll be speaking to them a lot differently than you're speaking right now. They would have never had a nuclear weapon with me. They understood that. They would never have
And they will not have a nuclear weapon with you if you are re-elected?
They will never have a nuclear weapon, no. But you have a long time to go. They could have a nuclear weapon in 35 days, right? I have 7 months to go and 9 months to take office. A lot of bad things can happen in that. That's a lot. That's like an eternity. 7 months in this world, and especially in the Middle East, where it's so combative and so combustible. And this would be a time, if we had a real president, if we had a president that knew what he was doing, that could put two sentences together, that could get solved very quickly.
The stepdaughter, if I'm not wrong, of Kamala Harris raised money for UNRWA.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that means you should never vote for them. How could a Jewish person vote for Kamala Harris? And essentially, that's what probably is going to happen. Because you look at this guy, he can't walk down a flight of stairs. He can't walk across a room. He can't find the exit to a stage where they have 5 different sets of stairs. you might have Kamala Harris if this doesn't work out. You have her right now. If something happened to him, you have her. And that's right, she supports the enemy. But he supports the enemy too. Remember this, I'll leave it with this. If Biden was for Israel, October 7th would have never happened, and it did happen. And probably the most tragic day in the history of Israel, one of the most tragic days in the history of any country. But this should never have happened. It shouldn't have happened from the Israeli standpoint. It shouldn't have happened from the United States. United States, if they respected our president, it would have never, ever happened.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
President, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you both.